Hey there! After 5 years, I sold my Niche Zero coffee grinder, and in this video I want to talk about what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and of course what I replaced it with. So yeah, as you can guess, this is going to be a long-term review. Basically, I want to start with what I liked about the Niche Zero, because it's actually quite a lot to like about it. That's why I got it in the first place, and also why I kept it so long, even though my coffee habits changed a bit over the years. So the first thing is, even in the name, it's the niche part, so the zero retention, which is actually quite on point. In those 5 years, I really didn't have to clean it that much. Maybe I should have, but it was just not necessary because there's just not much coffee grounds inside of this machine that are building up. So when you use it on a daily basis, or maybe even more, it's quite fine. Everything that goes through, also lands down there, and there's really not much in there. That also means it's not. It is for the single dosing group out there of you. So those that really, want easy handling, and I'm just thinking about different ones that weigh it through or something and just get your 20 grams or rather 18 grams. It's not for you. It's really zero dosing. So you have your scale, you put in your coffee beans, and then you put it in the niche. It goes through, not much left inside of the machine. So you're basically the target group for that. But of course, you don't need to clean much. It's really very easy going. Also other things, I really cannot think about any issues I ran into in those 5 years. And what this coffee grinder also is, I would think it's beginner friendly. I would say beginner friendly if you already made up your mind that you're going to do single dosing, of course. I think this is something I realized right now, that of course if you're a complete beginner and you have espresso, let's have espresso with the portafilter, you maybe like something that actually weighs it. In this case, you really have to have an additional scale. You measure your beans, you put it in, and that exact amount comes out. But what I mean with beginner friendly is the way the Niche Zero grinds your coffee beans, it will be quite nice for espresso, for example. So especially for the dark roasts, also for medium roasts, I think light roasts, but more to that later, will be the limits of the machine, or it just will be a little bit harder. But everything there, it's quite made this way, the way it grinds, that for espresso you can start really quickly. For me, as an absolute beginner that I was back then 5 years ago, it was quite easy. It was really, I could get good espresso real quickly and change a little bit on the grind setting and also see the results very much immediately. So this is what I actually mean with beginner friendly. If you have, of course, some family members that get a nice espresso machine and just want everything, more on the automated side, it's probably not the right thing. But I'm talking really espresso or even filter nerds here that already know, I'm gonna buy my 200 gram of really nice coffee beans and not gonna let it sit in a hopper or something. So but you already know that, I would assume, if you're watching this video in the first place. And another thing which sounds interesting, and it's probably a very personal thing, but it's the actual sounds of the machine, the way it grinds. It's not too quickly, which is not for everyone. Sometimes you can think like, it should be more quick. But in this case, it's a little bit more on the slower side. And I feel it is a nice sound for an electric coffee grinder. Especially in the morning, if you maybe have a partner that is at least in the other room. They will still get woken up by the sounds, but maybe it's a more pleasurable sound. And also maybe for you, because there's sometimes grinder that really make bad noises when they grind the coffee beans. And in this case, I really liked it. So if that's something if you're more sensitive to sounds, it's maybe really something to look into or to think about if you're considering the Niche Zero and comparing it to other coffee grinders. Okay, so what I also liked about the Niche Zero is the workflow. I keep telling that story about the beginners that, when you put the portafilter to a grinder and it goes through, it might be easier. But if you are into the single dosing game, also for espresso, so you have your 200 grams of coffee bags, you weigh in 18 grams or 20 for filter or whatever you like. Then it is really the Niche Zero, I feel, is just perfect for that. The cup, you can weigh it in the cup, you put it in the grinder, then, it goes through. There's not a lot of mess. You have this cup, you put it on your portafilter, and there's just no mess in the whole kitchen, right? It could happen with the normal grinder that grind directly into your portafilter. There's a lot of dust, there's a lot of static. It is just everywhere, the coffee beans. With the Niche Zero, I can definitely tell you when I used it for espresso for a long time, but also for filter later, it really just worked fine. So there's not a lot of stuff to clean with the grinder itself, in the grinder itself, but also around the grinder. So the whole workflow, if you're into single dosing, it's definitely for you. But this also brings me, of course, right to the parts or the stuff that I didn't like about the grinder. If I love it so much, why did I sell it? You would probably ask. So, of course, the thing is, first of all, the single dosing part. I keep telling that, and I actually almost forgot about it. If you're a total beginner and watching this video and didn't compare it to other grinders, it is very common in specialty coffee, I feel, to have for home baristas single dosing. But if you just don't like that, if you can't bother in the morning to weigh in your beans because you just want to put the portafilter in, then the Niche Zero is probably not for you, because really, I think there's probably now some add-ons that you could do directly into the portafilter, but it's definitely it's not built around that workflow. There's different grinders that have that maybe right out of the box. And of course, I think the bigger parts though, and actually for me, is the new price realities. When I bought it 5 years ago, I got it directly from UK, and it was, no extra taxes or anything. I actually watched this again now when I was starting to think maybe I sell it, I go to a different grinder. And you cannot really buy the Niche Zero here in Central Europe so easily. So if you would order it directly, there is taxes on top of that. So, but yeah, the overall thing is it's very pricey. It is really very expensive, I feel. It didn't used to be. 5 years ago, there was, I feel, not much on the market. I mean, depending, of course, when you watch this video. If you watch it in another 5 years, it could be. But let's say 2020, right? There was really not much on the market back then. I mean, there are some other options, but most of it was more expensive. And this was the perfect price point where you get a lot of value for your money, a nice workflow, that single dosing thing, not much, need to care about. So it was perfect back then. But of course, after some time, there's other grinders on the market. And I feel like nowadays, if you compare, depending where you live in the world, you maybe get very much different burrs, very much more options for actually a cheaper price. And that is also the first reason why I sold it. It is the price, because I knew it was still like the Niche Zero was still, everyone knows it. It has quite a big name. So I did get quite a lot of money for it when I sold it secondhand. So someone bought it from me. But of course, this also brings me back to the positive side for those of you that are looking into that grinder. If you get it cheap secondhand, it is probably still worth thinking about it. But for the new price, I think there's other coffee YouTubers that do really big comparison. I looked into that as well, and there you can really see the market moved on, and there's way more options at this price point. And this is one of the bigger, I think, disadvantages of the Niche Zero nowadays. And another thing that is more on the personal side, because I think the price is very objective, right? Like you can say for that price, you get other stuff. But the grind profile, this is more personal preference. I used it the first few years for espresso. Then I switched a little bit to more filter coffees at home, and I didn't do espresso anymore. And there it was still nice and great, to be honest, because, it still works fine, also for cold brew. So you can have a big variety of brews at home with the Niche Zero. But at some point, I really felt like I kind of outgrew the way the grind pattern, let's call it grind pattern, ground distribution, whatever you want to call it, the way it influences when you brew filter with it, mainly in my case. I wanted to try something different after all that years. I knew there's different things out there. Coffee beans also evolved even more. There's different flavors, and I really wanted to feel those more. And it is very kind of known that the Niche Zero produces nice for espresso, also nice for filter. It's both of those, but if you want to really have extremely nice filter, espresso probably depends on the roasts. For darker roasts, it's definitely fine. You would, go for a different grinder. And this was another reason why I actually, got rid of it. And another more personal thing is that the Niche Zero doesn't have this auto-off function. I'm not sure if the new one has it, but I don't think so. But mainly, the Niche Zero, you have to manually turn it off. It is something I didn't know I want to have, but my new grinder has it. So, this is also one thing that I would really look into this nowadays. I think it has to be a really amazing overall grinder if it would not have this auto-off function. Because for my workflow, when I, prepare the beans, I put it in the grinder. Then I go get the filter, put in the cone and everything. And then it just turns itself automatically off. It is really nice to have. If you don't know that, you maybe don't care, but just think about it a bit if it would be something you would really like to have. And in the case of the Niche Zero, well, you don't have it, sadly. So, should you get the Niche Zero? It's the question now that you may be asking. And I'm really struggling a bit with this, to be honest. I feel like, as I said before, if you get it for a really good price, used, depending where you are, you could probably go for it. You would still be happy. It also depends where you are on your coffee journey. If this is not your first grinder, but maybe your second, maybe your third grinder, because you started with a really cheap one and you want to upgrade now. I think there's just other alternatives on the market. Watch some cool grinder comparisons of big YouTubers, you know who they are, and you will definitely see they also say Niche Zero is nice and everything, but there you have this other amazing grinder, which is probably even 20-30% cheaper, and has actually more functions, different burrs. You can change the burrs. It's flat burrs, not conical ones. Or maybe you want to switch actually around on that end. So it's your second grinder, your third grinder. You keep upgrading, So for those of you, I think you can probably skip the Niche Zero. Let's just say it where it is. Because there's going to be more and more alternatives, and also, of course, which kind of coffees you make. But for the beginners out there that really go into espresso for the first time and single dosing is a thing you want to do, I think for those of you that are really early in their journey and can get it for a good price, or maybe you're living in the UK, I think it's probably it's a valid option or something to think about. But then if you're into filter coffee and you already have maybe a grinder that also goes more for clarity, it's again probably not for you as well, at least from taste-wise, what I can tell from all those years that I used it. So really, to sum it up again, if you're a very beginner, it's your very first grinder. It's an amazing first grinder because it actually was my first grinder to learn everything. And when you outgrow it, you can still think about it. And as you saw, I could have still used it for 5 more years, by the way. I sold it, and I think the new owner will probably be very happy with it. So it also doesn't take much space. So all of that, it's really nice. So for the beginners, definitely still worth considering if the price is not that big not an issue for you and there's no alternatives that you like. But for everyone that is more advanced, I think you should really look into other alternatives. But of course, now I want to hear from those happy Niche Zero owners that are watching this and already in the comments wrote, that's, you don't like it, you know, I really love it still, you didn't get the machine or something, I still like the profile even for filter. Just let me know in the comments, because I of course like other opinions very much a lot, especially for those of you that keep using it, are really happy with it. And actually I was also really happy with it. Because yeah, what I did is just outgrow it. And that brings me, of course, to what I replaced it with, which is the Fellow Oat 2. And now everyone will be saying, but that's a filter-only grinder, which I know. And that's the new reality. I don't do home espresso at all, so I didn't really need a grinder that can cover everything. And that's what I replaced it with, basically. And price-wise, yeah, I could get a Fellow Oat and even a hand grinder, at least parts, well, price-wise of a hand grinder for the price I almost sold the Niche Zero. So there you have it again. The big issue with the grinder I have is just the price, I feel. And well, if you are interested now into my first steps with the Fellow, then I'll show you a video somewhere here where I unbox it. And also some more videos here where I review other coffee gear. And if you're curious which kind of coffee places I like to visit, then yeah, there's also some videos somewhere here for you. So thank you for watching and see you next time.